Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Virtualization Showdown, How Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops Beats the Competition. My name is Darlene Jaramillo and I will be your host for today's presentation. Our featured speakers for today are Rob Beeksman, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Citrix, and Nitin Sharma, Senior Technical Marketing Manager at Citrix. Before we get started, let me cover a couple of housekeeping details. We will have a dedicated question and answer session at the end of today's presentation and invite you to submit your questions at any time during the presentation using the Ask a Question window in the webinar interface. Also, this event is being recorded and a link to the on-demand version will be sent to everyone in a follow-up email. With that, I will now hand it over to Nitin to start the presentation. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Darlene. So my name is Nitin Sharma. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager for Workspace Services. So I've been with Citrix for about 8 years in various roles, and I'm presenting alongside
with Rob Beekman. Hi. I joined Citrix 2.5 years ago, and I've been in IT since '93, I think, something like that. And I started working with Citrix. I entered the end-user computing field when Citrix released WinFrame 1.7 and was around '96, I think. So in the meantime, I was a Citrix and a VMware consultant. So I've been there, and let's have some fun.
Thanks, Rob. So we're excited to have everybody on today. We're going to cover a lot of topics here in a condensed amount of time. But one of the things I wanted to highlight first is basically when we talk about app and desktop, whenever we talk about our features and functionality, we like to focus on our core product investment principles. So you're going to see a key theme here around choice. Basically, choice means admin choice, flexibility, any cloud, any device. A lot of administrative tools that allow you to manage those various, aspects of your infrastructure. In security, we talk about basically how, app and desktop is inherently secure by design, but also like how we're investing in a lot of our security features and functionality and why customers may choose Citrix over the competition from a security perspective, and as well as, experience. So this is basically, we focus on ensuring that we provide an optimal end user experience, a native-like experience, even though those workloads are hosted from, whether they're on-premises or from the cloud, far away from the actual end user's location, we're trying to create a lot of aspects of our portfolio to address a lot of, challenges, whether they're network-related or performance-related. So our key thing is basically, a lot of customers may choose Citrix over competitors just basically just due to the fact that how we provide an optimal end user experience. So you'll see these key themes here. So before we go into each one of those, I wanted to hand it over to Rob to go ahead and talk about some of the key things as far as why Citrix has been a big player within a lot of the events that happened in early 2020.
Yes, thank you, Nitin. So we can't start any presentation in 2020 without talking about business continuity, and not because we think it's a cool subject, but because organizations are looking for ways to keep their business running in time of crisis. And Citrix has been helping existing and new customers with their business challenges. So customers and companies were caught off guard by this crisis. It came up very fast, and although remote working was happening, it wasn't happening at this scale. Many customers and companies turned to Citrix for help, looking for the fastest way to turn this crisis around and keep their business going. Work from home or work through a pandemic was a fact. At Citrix, we were able to help because of the number of solutions we had at hand. Remote PC access, for one, turned out to be a hero in the story for many customers. I know customers that overnight or within days made it possible for thousands and thousands of users to work from home. Other customers scaled up their CVAT environment. And Citrix Cloud came into play here a lot, by remote PC access and CVAT service, managed from one central console with very limited requirements at resource locations. So in a conceptual architecture, you see that the standard scenario of a user in the office connect to their office PC and connecting to virtual apps and desktops delivered through Citrix Cloud services. In a remote PC scenario, the office machine the user was connected to becomes the resource, and therefore, let me click right, and therefore moves into the on-premises resource section. This is a Windows PC in the office now, and a Windows PC in the office was already joined to the domain, so they have access to all the resources already. So remote PC access provides single sign-on enabled secure remote access to company resources. The user experience is delivered through ACX display technologies, best protocol on the market, without needing a VPN through Citrix Gateway. We even support HTML5 clientless agents. We gain insight into user behavior, detect anomalous activity with Citrix Analytics. We'll see more about that later on. We offer wake on LAN capabilities in case the desktop is powered off accidentally. You could do that as a user, shut down your desktop. But you can also power it on with SCCM. And we have secure watermarking and other features in the session available because now people work at home and, well, you might want to protect your IP a little bit more, but more about that later. We have a cool demo there. I'm going to over this one real quickly. The architecture, there's a real cool tech doc about this, so please read up on the tech doc, but I will cover it real quickly. Let's see what's going on under the covers. The admin will now need to install the VDA on the machine, and then the VDA registers with the on-premises delivery controller or with Citrix Cloud. And with Citrix Cloud, you need the least amount of components running in your on-premises environment. The admin will now need to perform the steps to make the machine available to the user. So first, the admin creates a machine catalog with Office PCs that need to be connected to remotely. And we do this by searching for the machine hostname in the Active Directory when to add them to the catalog. Then the admin creates a delivery group, just like you would do in a normal desktop pool. So we can associate users with their individual Office machines that they have been using. This will create a one-to-one mapping for the users with a desktop and laptop. Then the admin can publish them as a resource to the user workspace, and the user can log on to the workspace and click on the newly added resource and add them and connect to the desktop and laptop. And I want to start with one customer case. We had a University of Sydney, and they are quite an interesting customer case. So during the start of their semester this year, they run into quite a number of crises. So it started with bushfires, they had local flooding, and then COVID-19 virus. All of them caused AVOC for the university. It was so much AVOC in the beginning that up to 20% of student population was unable to return to campus or class. But with COVID, of course, it even went higher. And as a long-time partner of Citrix University IT team, they deployed an entire digital environment. So they enabled the remote access to coursework, apps, data. And with virtualization from Citrix, it allows the university to run intensive apps in the cloud. And it took them 1 week. It took them 1 week, twice here even, because that's quite amazing. 1 week, 80,000 students and staff, 22 locations, 100 plus apps, 1 week, and they were up and running. And to compare that, I have a local elementary school with 100 kids here, and it took them 1 month to figure out how Zoom worked. So, I mean, this is really quite an achievement. And I'll hand it over to Nitin.
Thanks, Rob. So now we can get into some of our, the first section of our 3 core principles. We're going into choice. So when we talk about choice, we kind of use it interchangeably with flexibility. So basically, it's about investing more in the product, simplify management, but also expand the number of use cases you could address with, Citrix solutions. So when we talk about choice, it's about administrative tools, management, image management, basically a lot of tools that actually help you enable and manage your Citrix infrastructure and your workloads, whether that's in various cloud vendors or or on-prem solutions, or basically whether you're using Azure, Amazon, or Oracle or Google. Our whole intent is basically ensuring that you have a lot of management capabilities depending that fits best within your organizational needs. So before I get into the actual choice section, wanted to talk about this story about University of Vermont Medical Center. University of Vermont Medical Center, like they are, one of the key themes is they wanted to, consider Citrix over our competition basically for consolidation. So, the Vermont Medical Center, they were a long-term Citrix customer. They're using VMware View. So when they were looking at standardizing their IT infrastructure to a single platform and deliver an EMR, Epic, which was Epic, they were looking at Citrix for basically using for desktop virtualization as well as app virtualization. I actually went with Citrix Workspace, which for folks not familiar with it, Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service is part of Citrix Workspace, but also a part of our broader platform, which enables endpoint management, file sharing, as well as analytics. So one of the key benefits that they got as far as deploying and leveraging Citrix was the ability to publish Dragon Medical One, which is a dictation software that can now be accessed pretty much on anywhere and any device. Basically allowed them to improve workflows as well as the clinician and patient experience. I would say, I would suggest reading more about this customer story. It's on our customer stories section of our website. But I do like the quote that Lisa Pratt, who I've had conversations with, she's saying basically there's things that VMware Horizon View couldn't do when she compared us to from a solution from publishing apps as well as desktops. I'll hand it back over to Rob. He's going to get a little bit more in-depth as far as some of the aspects of choice and management flexibility.
Thank you, David. Yes, I would like to touch a few moments on choice. So Citrix is the only solution in the market, the only solution that supports any platform on premises, any major platform on premises, and all major cloud providers. So Microsoft, for one, of course, only runs on Azure. Citrix adds value to Microsoft WVD solution. We're great partners. And if you look at VMware, they also support Azure with their Horizon on Azure solution extending WVD, but they don't support any other cloud natively. All platforms they support outside Azure are running on vSphere, many through VMware Cloud. So Citrix also supports VMware Cloud. We just added support last week for VMware Cloud to AWS, and next to our native AWS support. And the difference between a native and a non-native support is that with a native solution, you use the instances provided by the cloud provider. With Citrix, we support both solutions. But if you support natively and you use the instances, you can scale up and scale down without having to rent hosts for a month or for a year or a longer time. It's way easier to scale up. You can scale up to 1,000, and tomorrow you can scale down to 500. And when you have VMware Cloud on AWS or anywhere else, you are bound to a host that you have rented. Then we go to cost and scalability, because cost is a really important part of a TCO, and scalability and user density is one of the biggest factors in bringing down cost. So back in 2019, we did a comparison test at Citrix between Citrix and VMware. We were comparing scalability of both solutions in Azure, running on Windows Server 2016, because we couldn't run on WVD at that time. Citrix was a clear winner here. The higher density, the better scalability means that you need less instances, and so if you need less instances, you are paying less for resources. The same test was done again this year. But now we use WVD workloads, Windows 10 multi-user in Azure. And of course, I would say, again, Citrix scaled amazingly. The whole test and explanation is found on the Citrix blog. Read it so that you can see that we understand what we are doing and the numbers don't lie. But there is a really key thing to explain here. Like if you build a Citrix environment in Azure, you pick a Windows image from the marketplace. That Windows image is tuned with Citrix Optimizer, the only tuned optimizer tool which is supported in the market. And if you do the same at the VMware side, the VMware images are vanilla. So what you see in the numbers here is that it's a vanilla VMware versus a Citrix Optimizer. So, but we also realize that. So we optimize also the VMware one, just the same way we would to optimize the Citrix image. And then still we are 53% better than the VMware side. And 53% is quite a lot. If you see that in larger environments, that could really save you a lot of money. So let's go a tad deeper here quickly. For the test, login VSI was used. It's an industry standard in testing. And as you can see in the graph, Citrix doesn't reach VSI max. That's the point where something, CPU memory, something is finished. You cannot add more users there. And VMware reaches VSI max around 20 users. But more interesting here is the latency. VMware reached a latency of 2063 milliseconds, where Citrix never came even close to the threshold. And that shows quite a lot on how well we perform on environments. And if we even go a little bit deeper, we did two tests. So one test is filling up a server with the number of users and then see, hey, I can have 39 users and they can have 24 users or 20 users. And the second test is like, if they can only have 24 users, let's do a test with 24 on both sides so that you can see how CPU memory handles that. And as you can see, Citrix CPU level is around 70-80% at 24 users. It's nice. It's hanging there. And VMware goes up to 100%, totally 100%. So their solution is really CPU intensive. And Nitin, can you tell something about autoscale?
Yeah. So speaking on the, you're talking about Azure, basically, public cloud workloads in general. We have a feature called autoscale, which allows, mostly for customers that are running hybrid environments to do schedule-based scaling or load-based scaling and optimize and reduce compute costs associated with public cloud. So this is a scenario that showcases the cost savings that are achieved in a schedule-based scenario, leveraging Azure West Compute instances. So in this scenario, there's like a horizontal scaling with defined peaks and off-peak hours. So within off-peak hours, you have 0 active users. Other important things to consider, the cost per month calculation assumes the machines are running the entire month, which is about 730 hours. The storage cost is fixed in this scenario, regardless if the machines are powered on or off. So with autoscale, we reduce the time the machine remains powered on to better align with those user behaviors. So, if all machines are shut down after all peak hours, after off-peak times begin, the number of hours the machines would be on during the month is only 198 hours. So you can see exactly on the table on the right the costs associated if you have without autoscale, and the cost per month with autoscale for those 3 different compute instances. That's one of the powerful tools that that we've released with to help organizations that are like looking towards and going down that hybrid cloud route.
Thank you. Yes, and now something that I find really important in topics, it's image management. I think it's even one of the most important topics for admins when they are managing an environment, because without good image management, you have an awful lot of work. So image management and building an environment always starts at day one. So you build a master image and you add applications to it. You install it on an operating system, you install a driver for a hypervisor, and that's day one. Any solution that you find out there, any script could do this. And I don't know if all of you know about the movie Groundhog Day, where day one keeps on repeating, but in real life, day one only happens once. So you're stuck with day 2 and beyond. And day 2 is when you need image management, and when lack of it will keep you busy. Because on day 2, 3, 4, day 20, you're asked to update an application, you're asked to remove an application, install an application. And doing that without true image management will mean that there are temp files left behind, that there are other files there, or that when you deinstall an application, not the whole application gets deinstalled. So the image gets a bit messier. And in due time, that image will work different than expected. We all been there, and one server behaves different than the other one. So users would call you up and say, like, can I connect to that one server, because there the application works perfectly, and the other one, it doesn't work as I expected. And some images will break after time because you keep on editing the image. And when it breaks, you have to start all over. And if you did it manually, then you have to remember what you exactly did with that image. But what if you have more than one image to manage? What if you have 2, 3, 5 images? Because per desktop pool, you could have a different image. So every time you have to update Windows Server 2019, but because it's all different image, you have to update it on different master images, and also with software and everything. So, and you should always wonder then if everything goes exactly the same way in all those images. They might just be a little bit different. So I don't think it's anybody's hobby to install apps, update them 5 times or so. That's not what we want. So at Citrix, we have a great solution for that. It's called app layering. And with app layering, you create layers for operating system, platform drivers, any other drivers, applications. And then you merge those layers into an image, and then you deploy the image, and users can work with the application and everything. And if you would move that same image, let's say, to another platform, you just have to remove the platform layer to deploy to another platform. And if you need to update, then you just take away the accounting software layer here, and you have a new accounting software layer with a version 2. You add it in there, you merge them together, and you deploy it out, and then you have an updated image. And here you think all those layers will bring down identity of the server, they will bring down performance. But it does not. A merged image, an image with merged layers, has a 0% impact on performance. This is a Login VSI slide from their webinar. Please check out the webinars. It's really good to learn about app layering. If you look at the numbers here, so without layering, they reach 250 users on a system, and with a merged layer system, they also reach 250 users. Only when they use elastic layers, they go down in scalability. So the same if we look at logon times. If we look at logon times without a layer, we see it's around 30-second logon time, and it's all quite even over the whole test. And if we see a merged layer environment, then we see the same impact there. There's 0 impact. Click on, and if we do elastic layers, with elastic layers, you see there is impact. So any solution out there that has an app layering solution, there are like VMware has app volumes, and you have other products that have app layering solutions. They can only connect an application to a running VM. They cannot do a merged image like we do. They can only connect application to VM. So they would all be in the blue spots there. And our friends from Nutanix tested the impact of VMware app volumes. So if you connect one desktop, your scalability goes down from 800 users that they were running in that cluster to 550 users. That's massive. That's 26% impact on your user density. And that's why Citrix app layering with merged images is a better solution for management, because you don't have to update X images, and for performance. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Nitin for a security story.
Thanks, Rob. So I wanted to go into some of the key things on security that makes our solution unique over our competition. But when we talk about security, it's like we want to ensure, like how do we adjust user activity based on security requirements? We want to ensure that the user can still be productive on whatever device they're using or wherever they are, but also adjust the breadth of user access based on the information regarding the device or network or task. So we believe, security is not just a black and white solution of access denied or access granted. We want to ensure that security solutions dynamically adjust to protect, corporate data, but also keep the users productive. When we go into security, this is sort of a summation of some of our unique aspects when it comes to accessing Citrix workloads. When we talk about watermarking, this basically displays a text across the Citrix session that identifies the user's IP and the username, which essentially can mitigate, if someone's taking a picture or a screenshot. There's keylogger and screen scraping protection. These are actually two things that we actually have a demo we'll showcase here. So I won't necessarily go into that right now, but non-domain join is something unique. These are great for setting up contractor-style desktops. A good example is defense contractors, not allowing access from, domain computers. So they had non-domain join, so nothing can travel back and forth from the endpoint or to the network. Endpoint analysis can actually give a viewpoint as far as like all the capabilities or what information is on that endpoint, and if there's anything that is malicious or anomaly taking place. And you can set, admins can set up granular policy controls, such as restricting copy and paste, limiting USB drive access or capabilities, or allowing or not allowing client printers. So the policies can be dictated depending on how much user access and capabilities you want your users to access their Citrix sessions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob. He's going to actually go through a little demo video of app protection policies.
So to show app protection policies, let's start with setting a keylogger so that we see what's going on the machine, and open Notepad, and I'm going to type in some private info. And as you can see, the private info is captured in the keylogger below, and that could also happen on your home computer, because now in these days we have to work from home, but not everybody has a device from the office, so we could be working on computers that are infected with malware and where keyloggers are running. So I borrowed an environment from a colleague, so I have to type, I think I did it right, typed in the password, and password of course is encrypted, you cannot see that, the keylogger cannot read my password. So I'm logging into Workspace. That's the new Citrix receiver for those who are not familiar with it, where you have tasks and apps and files and micro apps and everything available. So let's now open an app. I got 2 apps available. I got a Salesforce native app and a Salesforce secure app. So first I'm going to start a native app. As you already see, with the native app, we are running it in a native browser. And when Salesforce has opened, then now I'm going to type in some secret info that I have from a customer account and that nobody else should be able to read. But as you can see, the keylogger can read it. And if let's say I made a deal with a competitor or somebody else that I would send some information over so that they can win the deal. Let's make a screenshot. So I can make a screenshot. I have a picture. I can send it to anybody if that would help me or whatever. But it's not a good thing. It's stealing data. So if we now take Salesforce Secure, and the other one is still open, as you saw, I minimized it. If you now look at Salesforce Secure, then we are opening a secure browser. We have a watermark there. As you can see, we have a secure browser there, and the watermark. And then I'm going to type in the secret info again. And as you can see, the secret info is now not captured by the keylogger. It's not readable, at least. So, as you can see here. So, let's also make a screenshot to show how that works. If you're running app protection, then you cannot make a screenshot, which helps protecting your data.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to go into experience is basically our main goal as far as how do we ensure that that end user has like a native-like experience because they're accessing apps and desktops and information all virtually from somewhere else. Our goal when we look at experience is to optimize that Citrix experience or that Citrix workload, no matter what device they're accessing from. They get the same experience as they're moving from device to device. If they're accessing graphics-intensive virtualized workloads, even on poor network conditions, it's basically allowing them to have that native-like experience so they can be productive. Another key thing is when we talk about experience, we also talk about admin experience. Like how are we ensuring that administrators have all the tools for them to ensure that their jobs are easier. They're actually able to manage, this sprawling infrastructure of Citrix workloads or just deploying apps and desktops to any user. First, I'm going to go into there's a demo video that Rob has on file copy.
So I shot a video to compare our protocol to other protocols and to see how it performs in bad weather. Because in sunny weather, everything looks beautiful, but you have to look at things in bad weather as well. Because now when people work at home, they have different bandwidths at home, they have latency at home, they may have packet loss. It depends what everybody else is doing at home. If somebody is downloading video, streaming audio, that might hinder their connection. So I created a setup for file copy where I have a lot of files and folders in different sizes, and I copy them from my virtual desktop to my endpoint. And every time the same file folder setting and for all the products. We also do this same kind of tests for 3D car movements and Excel scrolling and a lot of things, but I thought let's show you the file copy. As you can see, Citrix takes about 5 minutes to copy the whole set of files, and the other products are taking way longer there. So that just shows how efficient our protocol is and how it works in bad weather. And that's going to help you with user experience.
So thanks. So now I'm going to go into one of the things that we did last year was optimizing, especially this is very important for a lot of folks that are working remote, is optimizing unified communication platforms. So we had a lot of success when we developed the ability to partner with Microsoft on virtualizing, optimizing Skype for Business within virtual environments. And so we took that same aspect and capabilities and we replicated it for Microsoft Teams. Teams now, and we are the first and only, currently the only vendor that allows the ability to optimize and virtualize a team, like optimize and virtualize Teams through Citrix. So why was it that you'd want to optimize Teams? Basically, when we're, like you get a lot of control benefits when you're looking at optimizing and publishing Teams through Citrix. You can manage and deliver Teams alongside your existing virtualized apps and desktops. You could also ensure security, as you can store like chat logs and file exchanges and other data in the cloud and not on the end user's device. You could also limit access when the end user, if they're a contractor, if they leave the company. And then a lot of customers are interested in this because they may be M365, so you can use your existing investments and deploy Teams through Citrix. We'll go a little bit into a demo on the server scalability, enhanced server scalability aspects of it. It's better to showcase what Teams looks like when you're publishing it through Citrix and how it looks very similar to a native-like experience, but you also get the administrative controls on top of that.
Yes, thanks. It was fun to do this demo. So the Teams optimization is one where we see a lot of benefit to the user experience. It lowers the cost of your deployment as density goes up and you need less instances. It's almost like we are saying the same thing all the time. But it's really true, and that's also why it's important. You get two for the price of one. The same goes for browser content redirection. The user is happy as the content with massive resources will handle offloading whatever site they access on the internet. While density of the server goes up and thus less instances are required, again, for the same amount of users, again, the cost goes down. User happy, admin happy, company happy. So I think that's a win-win. The HTML content redirection breaks the browser up in a user interface in a viewport. The viewport portion is the portion of the browser displaying the web-based content. The user interface portions of the browser are running on the virtual desktop. The viewport portion of the browser are rendered on the endpoint and blended back into the desktop. Essentially, the browser content redirection is far more advanced than any of our competitors. We support more clients and more browsers, and we also support more ways of fetching and rendering, allowing for more use cases. And the green colored words are the ones that some of our competitors support. Most of them don't even have content redirection at all. So you can see that how far we are ahead of them. Configuring browser content redirection is done with Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop policies. Two different policies must be applied. The browser content redirection must be allowed, and access control lists must be defined to specify the wide list of URLs whose content will be redirected. And although asterisk wildcard character is permitted, It's not permitted in a protocol and domain portion of the URL, just so that you know. There are 3 scenarios how your content is fetched and rendered. That's different from our competitors. They quite often only have one. If they have something at all, they have one scenario. So we have 3 scenarios. The first scenario is server fetch and server render. The virtual desktop's browser fetches the content from the website and renders it from the local browser. The other one is server fetch and client render. So the virtual desktop browser fetches the content from the website. The content is sent to the endpoint and rendered locally. Then the content within the viewport is blended into the browser UI. And you have client fetch and client render. So the URL is sent to the endpoint so it can fetch the content directly. The content within the viewport again is blended within the browser UI. When the server fetches and renders, we consume significant resources on the virtual desktop. This is also a fallback option when the endpoint is unable to directly contact the resource and when the endpoint has no browser, like for instance a thin client. This is not the best use case if you have to use it like this. By moving the rendering to the endpoint, we lower the virtual desktop CPU RAM requirements. But in order to accomplish this, the endpoint must have a browser to do the rendering. And by moving the rendering and the fetching to the endpoint, we lower the CPU, RAM, and network requirements of the virtual desktop. In addition to browsing, we also need the endpoint to have internet access. So that depends on how your situation is and if you allow the endpoint to connect to the internet. So if we have a defense contractor, you would not allow the endpoint to connect the internet because you would have a lot of other people looking in your network as well. So I want to quickly talk about MCS.io. It can help you achieve amazing user experience at lower cost. And why? Because MCS.io is using a PVS technology. PVS is an amazing product. PVS technology called cache to RAM but overflow to disk. So everybody who's used PVS with cache to RAM but overflow to disk knows that you have unlimited resources available, and it's just amazing fast. And to use MCS.io, you don't have to buy an expensive premium SSD, so you can leverage a standard HDD. It's just cheaper disk, and that really helps. It improves stability and it gives better performance and lower storage costs. So if you look at the first bar where you see a normal HDD with no cache, the user density comes out at 61. It's quite okay, but it's not great. If we add MCS.io, it's the 4th and the 5th bar, and with a small disk, you get 76, 77 units. That's quite an improvement on the system with the same workload. And compare it to an SSD disk, which are more expensive as well. As you see, the user density improves slightly from 74 to 77. You have to see this in the bigger picture, not one instance. If you run 100 instances, that's 300 user difference with it, where with MCS.io you need less instances. And the user response time of all the users goes down. You see the yellow line. And response time is important for the users. So the lower response time is a good thing. And if I tie this all together, then it's a lower response time, again, which is a good thing, higher scalability, a better user experience, and a lower cost. So check it out. It's out there. It's really worth to look at. And with that, we go over to analytics.
Thanks, Rob. So when we talk about analytics, we introduced Citrix Analytics last year, and it's basically trying to leverage a lot of the data that comes through Citrix sessions, but also giving administrators the ability to leverage that information and improve the end user experience, but also this, the security aspects of it. So just kind of touching on analytics briefly. It spans across, various solution areas, so security, performance, and productivity. And you get a lot of information from basically the applications that users are using, the data that's being spread there, user information, as well as the networks they're on. You should get, it spans across our entire product portfolio, so you can get actual key insights on virtual apps and desktops, endpoint management information, our Citrix file solution, as well as our networking and access control. It's better to showcase in a demo, which we do have, but I wanted to showcase exactly what it is that when you're from a performance perspective, you can get actual information on the app network and infrastructure and get usage analytics. So you can track like usage across users and user groups. You also get performance analytics. You can monitor end-to-end performance. You can see what type of issues that the users are facing, and you track the usage across users and user groups. So from all that information that you can get, you can actually do user risk scoring. So you get actual information on how those users are scored, and you can determine and proactively address whatever type of information, like issues that user's facing. So if there's a slow login time, you can determine if it's a company or network, your infrastructure related, or if it's actual, the end user's network. You can also determine exactly how to improve that login experience. From the security perspective, you can get the same sort of information as well. You can actually get user behavior analytics, application analytics as well. You can determine what type of anomalies that are occurring when that user actually gets an issue. From there, you can actually see the same sort of similar things when you see performance analytics. You can see you get the data that's there. You can address and see risks associated with that user. So they'll be scored based off high, medium, or low. And from there, you can actually take, the admin can take an action to actually limit or end that user access and determine exactly what's going on. Good example of this is if I'm usually logging in from South Florida, and all of a sudden it shows that I'm logging in from China from a Windows when I normally use a Mac, that'll automatically trigger something that says it's a super high risk score, and the admin will get alerted so he can actually then address that before anything nefarious sort of happens and compromise the actual corporate information. So with that, I'm going to showcase and hand over to a demo for Rob to go through and talk about analytics.
At right now, so I opened analytics already. We have security, performance, and operations, as I said in the presentation. So this is the security center, and if we look, for instance, at Georgina has a high score, 99 score. So if I click on Georgina, I can see what's going on. She has a medium flag that she was logged on from a new location for the first time. She has a potential data exfiltration. So if I look what's going on, a lot of data has been exfiltrated. She has also extensive access to sensitive files, and so on. And there was endpoint analysis scan failed, but that's a low risk if that happens once. But she also is downloading quite a lot of files, and she has a jailbroken device. So I can imagine she's at 99. That's pretty normal. We can look at, let's say, compromised endpoints. So what endpoints are unmanaged, what endpoints had a failure for endpoint protection scan, what endpoints are jailbroken, and so on. You get quite an extensive overview there. You could do, of course, create some reports and things like that. This is really extensive view. There's also a tour here, so go to analytics demo.cloud.com if you have access to Citrix Cloud and do the demo. It's just there is a little button there that says demo access. Then we go to performance, because I cannot show everything. It's way too much to show everything. So performance, we start with the user experience, because, well, at Citrix we really care about the user experience. We care more about that than anything else. So you have all sites that you look at, but you can zoom into a specific site and then say like, hey, I have a few users here that have a poor user experience. So if I click on that and I zoom in, then I see the session availability for those users is quite bad. That means that if you zoom in again, that 2 users had a machine failure. That's never a good thing. So you can really dive into the user experience and see what's going on. You can see the number of user sessions, and again I can zoom in to a specific site. Session failures, I can see what was happening, what's going on there. Session responsiveness is an interesting part, so let's click here, and again here you see a query, and you can build this query yourself. You can click here, or you can say I'm gonna build it myself if you would like to. So if we open this one, then we see that session responsiveness was 405 milliseconds, which is way too high. And the interactive session, it took 43 minutes to build that. But there is a WAN latency and a data center latency that's also not really helping her out. To see what we had there. So, and if we go down, we see the session logon duration. That's always an important part. So how many of the sessions are poor and how many are good. And again, if we zoom in, you see the same query here. So there's a lot of things that you can build there. Let's wait for a minute that it loads. It has to load quite a lot of data. And there we see the data. So now if we go into Francine, because Francine has a 30, and as I explained in this with the slides, anything below 40 is pretty bad. So this is the breakdown of logon duration for Francine. So brokering was fast, VM start was fast, ATX connection could have been a bit faster, authentication is fast, and so on. The interactive session took 48 seconds, that's way too long. So the session responsiveness is bad in that time. And again, data center latency, 190 milliseconds latency in a data center. Something is wrong there. So the last section I quickly want to highlight is the operations section, where you can see the download, upload, total volume per user. And that might be interesting to see, like if people want to go to Facebook, that you can see we're redirected. The CBS News is blocked for some reason. The Pirate Bay, of course, is blocked. So this kind of information is interesting. So with that, I want to close down the volume, and I'm turning over to Mayank.
So thanks. So we're going to go in through and handle some of your questions. I'm going to hand it back over to Darlene to go through and see what audience questions are out there.
Thank you, Nitin. Now, as we move into the Q&A, I would like to remind our audience that if you have a question, please submit it in the Ask a Question area on your screen. Simply type your question into the text box and then hit submit. We have a couple of questions in queue. Our first question is, what browser and client is support for BCR? Can I use anything else than Chrome?
Shall I answer that one? You can use also Edge, so you don't have to do it. Our competitors are all limited, if they have it at all, to Chrome, but we also support Edge these days. Internet Explorer is it's still from Citrix supported, but Microsoft ended that support. So Edge and Chrome. And we have Windows and Linux clients that you can use.
Thank you, Rob. Our second question is, does Citrix support Teams optimization in a multi-user environment?
I can answer that also. If you just, in the demo that you saw that we did, maybe it wasn't clear enough, but we were running the demo on a multi-user environment. We're the only one in the market that supports a multi-user environment.
Alrighty, thank you for that insightful information, Rob. We have another question also. If I want to deploy on Azure today and deploy on AWS next week, can I do that with Citrix? Leverage AWS instances.
Yes, yes, you can do that. Yes, we deploy natively on any major cloud provider.
Okay, and it seems we have like 2 more questions on queue. Our next question will be, can I see where issues are in my Citrix environment with Citrix Analytics logon time? Slowness in login processing, running, latency, and so on. Do I need a third party and pay extra?
I think that's for you, Nitin.
No, so you don't need a third party or pay extra. It's essentially a part of, it's all one single platform that allow you to, be able to see pretty much everything on the environment. I don't know if I captured all that, Rob. You can fact check me on that.
Okay, thanks, Nitin. And then we have our last question for today's webinar Q&A is, can I manage my Citrix desktops from one console, whether they run Hyper-V or on Azure? Or do I need two environments for that?
Yeah, we have a centralized console, so you can manage from Citrix Cloud. You can manage any on-premises platform in any cloud, and even remote PC access. So they can move their workloads around wherever the use case is for the customer.
Okay, that is all for our Q&A session. I want to say thank you very much to Rob and Nitin for a very informative presentation, and also thank our audience for joining us. Just a quick reminder that you can check out and register for upcoming webinars and events by going to citrix.com/events. We hope you have a wonderful day.